Hello everyone, welcome back to another season of Get Fresh with Consent. We're super happy to be here and so thankful that we can do another year of this. My name is Sid.
And my name is Ella.
We're here today with some very special guests today, Jenna and Lydia. Do you guys want to introduce yourselves?
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Lydia. I'm a domestic violence practitioner.
Cool. I'm Jenna. I'm the manager over at one of our domestic and family violence teams.
Amazing. Thank you for being here today. So today we're talking a little bit more about healthy relationships, obviously, but today's topic is about power imbalances. So can you explain to us a little bit more about what power imbalances mean, particularly in relationships?
Absolutely. So I think we will start off by just explaining what a power imbalance is. So power imbalance is any environment, relationship, or any space where one person or one party holds more power than the other. And power can look like a lot of different things. So it could be around a person has more authority than the other person in potentially like a work context. They could have more resources like money. They could have more privilege, for example. So there's lots of different ways that power imbalances can play out.
Thank you for that explanation. That was really easy to understand and digest. What we want to know now is what are some simple examples that you can give us that people might be able to identify, that's something that they've been in or someone that they know. And yeah, what would you say?
Yeah, well, I think there's power imbalances in a lot of different relationships, and it could just be ones that you don't even think about as well. So even in family, like parent and child, there is that power there. In school situations, you've got your teachers, extracurricular, you've got your coaches, or like older mentors that you might be having dealings with as well. And there is that power imbalance that's there because of their age, their experience, and just what they're able to do.
And another example is that could be applicable to young people is when they're entering their first job. So there's a power imbalance with the employer versus the employee, and it's really important that the employer who holds that power is the one that maintains that responsibility to ensure that that power imbalance doesn't impact that person.
And like when we're talking about power imbalance, there might be one that's visible like parent or child, and that might be a safe, healthy relationship. But can you give us an example of when that turns into an unhealthy or unsafe relationship, and when power imbalances could turn negative, and when the person who has the power is using it against the person who doesn't have the power?
Absolutely. So I think we could look at relationships, for example. We often see power imbalances in the work that we do in the domestic and family violence space. And it is around how that person is made to feel. It is around whether they are safe, whether there is a level of control that's playing out, whether there is a level of fear for that person. I think it's really important to tune in to some of those bodily cues where you go, something just doesn't feel quite right here. It's some of those really little red flags that we often miss that is really important just to be aware of.
Yeah. So it really sounds like power imbalances are pretty normal in society, but how that power imbalance comes through and the intention that is coming through, that can dictate if it's a toxic relationship or healthy relationship?
Absolutely. Like for an example, in my role as an employer, it's really important that I am aware of the power that I hold in the workspace and address that and make sure that I'm acting ethically and responsibility to be making sure that that power imbalance isn't as visible and my employees feel safe and comfortable to be able to raise concerns.
I think, adding on to that, power imbalances, they are inevitable, and I don't think they're necessarily a bad thing because there's hierarchies, there's age, things that are, you can't help that, but it's more so what you do with that power and being able to be compassionate to those where they might feel intimidated by your power.
And not take advantage of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, cool.
It sounds like for the person with more power, it's really up to them. It's really their responsibility to recognize that power and I guess use it responsibly.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And be aware, I think it's a good lesson for everyone to really critically look at the privilege that they hold, because you might also be the person in a position of power and you're not aware of that. And then that could be playing out.
Yeah, absolutely.
What would you, what advice would you give to someone if they've recognised that either they themselves are being taken advantage of in the workplace or in a friendship or in a relationship because of the power imbalance, or vice versa, when they might be the person that's taking advantage of someone and they haven't realised, and they've been listening to this and they're like, actually something's not right here and I haven't been doing the best thing? Like, what would you give?
I think if you feel that you've been able to identify that there is maybe a power imbalance, or that you're feeling, like Jenna said earlier, of those body cues that something's just not right, the best thing would be to talk to a trusted adult, or a friend or a family member, or a teacher that you feel would be safe to do so, and get their advice around that as well. For someone, if you've identified that potentially you hold that power and you've been using it in a way that might not be as responsible, I think, first of all, great that you've been able to recognise that. But from there, maybe have a lot of reflection and see, okay, who in my life have I maybe made to feel less than, or potentially might be fearful of me because of the power that I hold. And from there, I think that's a good start to even just reflect on that.
Yeah.
Just for our audiences, what are some more subtle ways that power imbalances can show up?
So I guess in schools, for example, like your teacher already does hold that power, but a way that they could use their power against you is if they maybe made a joke about you or made a comment about you in front of the whole class, and that made you feel less than. That would be one example.
And I think in terms of relationships, sometimes we see older people dating younger people, and there's a pretty clear power imbalance there because of not only the age, that person's access to resources too. So they might have a car, they might have a job, where the other party is still in school and hasn't had that life experience outside of the school environment.
And they can use that power to their advantage. Like, I won't take you to this party in my car if you don't do this for me, or something like that.
If you don't drink or if you don't.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Or they might even just say things that you just assume that they're true because they do have more experience, and they could be completely false, or saying that to make you feel scared, but it actually doesn't have any meaning to it.
You mentioned a little bit earlier about workplace. Can you give us an example, especially if some of our younger viewers are leaving school for the first time this year, or entering into a new workplace, and what that might look like in the workplace?
Yeah, so I think there's a few different ones that could come up in the workplace. The first and most obvious would probably be an employee with the boss. So whether that's the direct line manager or the big boss, there is that power imbalance there. So one of the ways that they might be using their power in a negative way is if they're, maybe getting you to take on more shifts than you're supposed to, or making you feel guilty if you're not able to go into work, and maybe holding the job over your head to be like, well, since you can't work this long shift, don't know how you're going to go the next couple of times. And another one could even be within your colleagues. So say, for example, you're doing the same job. Say, for example, you're working at Subway, and you're both sandwich artists.
Personal experience?
Absolutely. And, someone who's been there for a little bit longer, they know the ropes a little bit more. And maybe they're just like, oh, you know what, I don't really feel like doing the bread today because it's a hard job. I'm going to say, hey, you need to do the bread today. Or they might say like, oh, well, no, you've got to mop the floor and you've got to sweep. I'll stack the dishwasher, or something like that. So they might use...
Giving you the tougher job.
Yeah, they might use their experience and the fact that maybe you don't know as much as they do to say, no, this is what you're supposed to do. I'm okay to just sit back and make sure you're doing it okay.
Yeah, okay.
I think we can resonate with some of these experiences because I am Lydia's direct line supervisor, And I think it's really important for me as the person that has the power in that relationship to be aware of what that looks like within our service, within our supervisory relationship. And it's me that has to make sure that I'm making ethical decisions because I'm the one that has that power. But I think it's really important to note that employees also have rights, and you need to make sure that you understand what your workplace policies and procedures are. And if you ever feel uncomfortable or that something is not right, there is always a process and somebody to talk to.
Yeah, and that applies to all workplaces. I think if you're ever not sure, it is best to ask or, clarify and not just take people's word for it.
So, in summary of our conversation and our chat that we've just had, what would be your take-home closing statement for our viewers?
Well, power imbalances are everywhere, and they're not necessarily a bad thing. They're just a part of life. But I suppose it is bad when someone is using that power for the wrong reasons or for their own gain, or to make someone feel fearful or under their control. I guess the biggest thing that we want people to know is the responsibility lies with the person who does hold that power, and they should be able to acknowledge that and do their own reflection on how they can best use that power and make sure that the people that are in their lives are comfortable and not in fear.
Amazing. Thank you guys so much for sharing your knowledge and spending the time with us today. We are very excited to get this show on the road for season 2, and we will close out for the first time this season, and we will see you in episode 2. Thanks, guys.
See everyone.